Buona giornata, good afternoon, organizers, speakers and guests, and many thanks indeed to Clara Mavelia for inviting me to this important conference. I'm delighted to introduce Power to Transform, a feminist think tank for female perspectives and creative industries, arts and media. My name is Yvonne de Andrés. I work as a cultural manager, press officer and curator, together with Barbara Rum and Deborah Ruggeri. We founded Power to Transform in early 2020. Our mission is to confront sexism and stereotype media representation. Motivated by our desire for change, we want to inspire others to work together for a society in which gender balance and diversity in culture, business and politics can be realized rather than being an anarchical utopia. We build bridges between research and science and the practical application. Because we don't lack female knowledge, we lack means of implementation, and we want to change that. Power to Transform, first building block, was the creation and development of a website offering a digital encyclopedia about sexism for public and media professionals, in which we address and classified the topic of sexism in the media. Our contents, main topics, and definition of terms when dealing with sexism and stereotypes, dominant patterns in the media and recurring female roles attribution, recommendations for action, best practices, and the research of literature reviews. Interviews with pioneers in the field of sexism reach in the media, bringing the issue of sexism into the public eye. Disseminate information and learning about the connections between sexism and stereotype, as well as the definition and delineation of individual terms such as sexism and sexual harassment and violence. Actively promote awareness and culture change on the subject of sexism. The online sexism encyclopedia will be continuously expanded and updated. Power to Transform was commissioned by the Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth to create the online sexism encyclopedia. Important components of our online sexism encyclopedia are the definition of terms. I would like to give you an example on this. Stereotypical portrayals of women in film are often when in relation to men. Very typical is the female dichotomy of the saint and the world. Either she is revered as honorable, untouchable, holy, or she is despised as a sexualized being and even treated with violence. The metamyth, the saint and the war, in the portrayal of women runs through the entire history of films. Such stereotypes that can still be found in the media, we show in the online sexism encyclopedia, because only if we recognize this ubiquity, stereotypical representation, we can change them and thus counteract such powerful role cliches in the media. We have conducted interviews with pioneers in the field. We talked to them about their experiences and sought their opinion on sexism in the media. Professor Dr. Rosa von Süß, she is a deputy head of media technology studies at the University of St. Pölten, talks to us. And she said, it makes a difference who writes a script, who directs, who creates the camera images, and who manages the production. Also, Susan Arndt, she is professor of English literature and cultural studies and Anglophone literature at the University of Bayreuth. She told us, admittedly, sexism has been on everyone's lips again, at least since #Aufschrei and #MeToo. but most of the times, people just hurriedly discuss things past each other instead of arguing on the basis of knowledge. Susan Arendt understands sexism as a comprehensive system of thoughts and domination. In her pivotal book, she describes both its history and how it is still expressed today. For only when it is understood what sexism actually is, can it be recognized, unlearned, and structurally changed to dismantled. The launch of the online sexism encyclopedia was complicated by the pandemic, so we started with the following activities, together developing a distinct online event concept which addresses and reaches to the target group. We developed the following formats: Power Morning, indeed, to be a short inspirational morning with a conversation guest speaker on the topic of the sexism lexicon. Power Mornings is a free of charge monthly breakfast time talk series to interest members of the public. In each talk, a topic from the Sexism Encyclopedia is presented and examined. Creative Evenings is a longer, in-deep online format for the evening. In this format, in addition to the talk, there is a change of tools and guidance for action, or even a short workshop. In addition to imparting knowledge, the focus here is also in the interaction between the participants. The approach is to convey knowledge and insight in a range of ways and the facility learning and knowledge growth. Having completed the first season between spring and summer 2021, the second season has been underway since late summer. We have seen that the entertaining morning format fits better into the everyday life of our attendees. Therefore, now only the Power Morning format takes place. In this way, we have covered different topics. We start with Barbara Rohm, culture manager, talked about the recurring female role types in the movies, in the series, and their history. From Hollywood to Tatort, the world is conveyed far too simplificationally. If we are repeatedly offered the same stereotypical images and portrayals of women in the media, this shapes our idea of reality. Traditional and stereotypical role models become reinforced instead of changing. That too complex and nuanced figures look like who are allowed to develop as rounded characters and not simply an object of objectification. Journalist Friederike Sittler and Christine Olderdissen from Journalistenbund talk about gender and language and their project Gender Leicht. They present tools for a creative use of language. Media researcher and media educator Dr. Maja Götz talks about a formative aspect. Here is media and the image that is conveyed about real women. Actually, we live in a world in which women could set themselves individually and strongly in scene. Actually, girls and women have never been as well educated as they are today, and yet they focus their self-esteem on their appearance and recognition by others. The opportunities for free career choices have never been as diverse as they are today, and yet girls take extremely gender-specific paths, them choosing a career which also affect their further prospect. The background to this is, on the one hand, male-dominated media production and the male perspective deeply inscribed in media text, but it's also women themselves who often sexualize themselves in their self-dramatization, e.g. on social networks, in poses in which gestures and thus models that other how a real woman should behave. Professor Elisabeth Prommer, head of the Media Research Institute at the University of Rostock, She states that men still explain the world to us in the media. Female experts have their say far too seldomly, even if more women than men work in the industry questions. Her conclusion: without a strong professional network, it's hard to climb the career ladder. Do women networks different from men? Do women network less effectively? It is really the network, or rather rope, networks that hold their power and resources that are important for success. And how can the male-dominated networks in the media industry be exposed by applying methods similar to those used to expose organized crime? With journalist Susan Kaiser, we talk about networks and strategies of the anti-gender movement and how they use the media for organized actions like hate speech in social media to defame and undermine women. Criminal defender lawyer and book author Christina Klemm addresses the background of femicide and the need to reform criminal law. According to the latest figures from the Federal Criminal Police Office, in Germany called BKA, every third woman in Germany is affected by physical and or sexual violence. Even in the media, violent crimes and homicides against women are not referred to as femicides. They are trivially referred as a jealous drama, honor killings or family tragedies. But femicide are not regrettable individual fates. They map gendered power relation. Emilia Roig, political science and activist, show how racism interacts with other types of discrimination in everyday life. And she raises the question of whether they can be a world without prejudice, without role stereotypes and discrimination against minority. Fight discrimination with discrimination makes inequality visible, with inequalities and empower minorities without minorities. In other words, leave no one behind. We made a second talk with Dr. Maya Götz. I told you she is media researcher and media education, about the image of men. Mainstream images of masculinity convey to us that men are active and capable and that they are entitled to privileges and a status of a matter of course. We spoke with the politician and longtime member of the Bundestag for Bündnis 90 Die Grünen, Christa Nickels, about the current documentary film, Die Unbeugsamen. The film depicts the female politicians who stood up to sexism in the Bundestag from the 1950s until reunification and who fought for a fair and more socially egalitarian policy. Last week, author Nicole Seifert was our guest. Her conclusion: women do not write less or less well. They just come up again. Invisible barriers get to the misogyny structures in the literary business. Neither the quality or the quantity of literature is to blame. In fact, the opposite is true. We are missing out on the best of it. We are missing out on the best if we don't finally introduce a women's quota in our bookshelf. Nicole Seifert calls for a formal look at the misogyny structures in the literary world and for a commitment for change. We continue to offer our monthly series of events. I hope this brief overview has weathered your appetite to get to us, to know us better. You are cordially invited to our next event. On December 7th, with Rebecca Entler, will be our guest speaker. She will talk about patriarchy of things, why women don't like the world. We would be delighted to welcome you to our further events. Please don't hesitate to contact Barbara or me directly. or visit our website, Instagram, or Twitter, or check out our newsletter regular. Thank you very much.